Well, neither side appears to be budging on these fiscal cliff showdown negotiations. And just yesterday, Speaker John Boehner declared we're at a, quote, stalemate. Syndicated columnist and former advisor to Presidents Nixon, Ford, and Reagan, Pat Buchanan, is joining us here in our studios right now. Welcome, sir. Great to have you.
Well, thank you very much. Glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. Let me ask you, do you think the president really wants to have any real negotiation, or is this just a show to say that if Republicans stand up to him, that he can accuse them of holding up the process, blame them for high taxes, and then he continues on with his legacy?
I think what the president believes is he has the whip hand. He's got a good victory. He won seats in the House and Senate, and he can pretty much dictate to the Republican Party. I think what we saw yesterday, Uma, was an act of real contempt toward the Republicans in that offer that was made, $1.6 trillion in new taxes, $50 billion in stimulus spending. And I think the Republicans have made a fatal, sort of a semi-fatal error. They indicated that, look, we'll give on taxes. Basically, we give up our virtue, our beliefs. It's only a question of how much we're going to give. I think Republicans should walk out of the talks with the President of the United States, terminate them, go back to the Hill, pass an extension of the Bush tax cuts, pass an extension of the payroll tax cuts. That would prevent us going off the fiscal cliff if the Democrats accept it. And then tell Harry Reid, do what you want on this issue, but this is where we are. I think the Republicans have made a mistake by indicating they would go along with $800 billion in taxes, and now what you've got is negotiating the price.
Why do you think those Republicans caved into the pressure and have already said that they would accept some kind of tax hike?
That's exactly the point. The Republicans have indicated they are far more afraid of going over the cliff than the Democrats are. Barack Obama's acting very tough, saying, I'm ready to go off the cliff unless you give me X, Y, and Z. And that's where the Republicans made a mistake, in my judgment. What they have to realize is, if they pass and extend all the tax cuts and send them over to the Senate, they have done their job. And if we go over the cliff, then it will be because of the President of the United States. It will be his economy. It will be his presidency on the line, also the country. If Barack Obama believes that deeply in the Clinton tax cuts, let them go back into effect for the entire country. And let's see if the country believes they're good for America.
The president is out campaigning again.
Right.
He's acting as though he received a 90% mandate when indeed he only received half the country's mandate. What impact do you think this is having right now on the psyche of the GOP at this point?
It's having an effect on the psyche of the president. And he is acting like he did win a huge victory, and he did win a substantive victory. And I think what has happened to the Republicans is they are fearful of all these taxes going up, and they're trying to negotiate a bargain in good faith to give away something and then say, if you'll give us something, make us look good, don't humiliate us. But the Democrats, I will say, they humiliated the Republican Party in making that offer. And I think for their own dignity, their own principles, their own beliefs, what Republicans ought to say is, we think that extending the tax cuts, payroll and Bush tax cuts, is what is good for the economy. It's what's good for America. It is consistent with our principles and consistent with our beliefs. And you're not going to put a gun to our head and tell us to give up all these things. So we're going to vote these things, and these will prevent us going off the cliff if you buy into them. Now, Mr. President, you can take us off the cliff, but you're going to be the one to do it.
Let me ask you this, though. Do you think there's a political will at this point to have those Republicans say, no, we're going to walk away from these negotiations and put it to a vote in the House over the Clinton-era tax cuts?
I don't know where the Republican leadership is. I am sure that in the Republican caucus there are people who are saying, look, let's not give up our principles. The president won. We are the opposition party. But we ought to stand for what we believe in, and they ought to do what they think is right. But my question is whether Mr. Boehner and Mr. Cantor and Mr. McCarthy, the Republican leadership, whether they've in effect, under pressure maybe from their contributors, are saying we got to do a deal, we got to do a deal, we got to do a deal. Once you walk into a negotiation saying we can't afford to walk out of here without a deal, you're at a disadvantage just in negotiating. And that is visible to the Democrats. And what the Democrats are doing, and I might have done it when I was younger, is grab the Republicans by the head and say, we're going to rub your noses in all your little protests against taxes and rub it in there for a while. And for their own dignity,
What do you think this has to do with, does it have anything to do with the fact that the Republican Party seems to be going through some soul searching right now after the election and trying to find perhaps a way to remake itself, to be more appealing to some constituents?
I think that the Republican Party is at a defining moment. There's no question about it. I mean, look, a lot of Republicans are saying we got to give up on immigration where we stood. That's not helping us with Hispanics. We got to give up on the social issues. We can't have, these Todd Aiken things going on. But the one thing that holds the party together, that brings us all together, neocons and paleocons, etc., is the fact that we stand for smaller government, less taxes. We believe the private productive sector is the way to go. We are the party of the private sector. Barack Obama leads the party of government. And we just ought to stand for our principles and beliefs. And look, if you go down to defeat, you go down to defeat. There's a revolutionary slogan. It's called the worse, the better. You want to take us over the cliff, President Obama, you take us over that cliff and let us see if the American people like it. If that's what they want, then you ought to be sitting in the Oval Office. If not, we'll have this out in 2014.
Pat Buchanan, great to have you here today. Thank you so much for your insights.
It's a pleasure.
Great to have you here.